Hello, everybody. My name is Debbie Solaris. I am a galactic historian, an Akashic Records guide, and also an ET contactee. And I'm going to continue on with the series of celebrity readings. I'm going to do some controversial ones. so, um, so I was having a conversation with my team, and we thought it would be interesting because we have a lot of these celebrities, or a few of these celebrities that are making the news because of their narcissistic behavior. So I had the brilliant idea, I guess, of doing a study on narcissism through Starseed origins. With this particular video, I'm going to do two male celebrities that have been in the news lately, quite controversial, I would say, for mostly their narcissistic behavior. So I'm kind of curious. I already opened up their record, so with this recording, we're not going to necessarily be going through the whole pathway prayer process. I just think that takes too long when you're looking at two individuals. So I already opened up their records, and so we're just going to pop in. I hope that that'll work. So I think we did pretty well with Kendrick and Drake, in some of the previous videos. The two people I'm going to be talking about today, the first one I've gotten a lot of requests for, and that's P. Diddy, also known as Sean John Combs. I think that's his real name, but he goes by P. Diddy. So I'm going to be looking at his records and seeing what he's all about. Why is he the way he is? And he's been in the news a lot. I would say he's infamous for the white parties and all the sex parties and the pedophilia and all the other things that he was involved with. So I'm kind of curious to see what his connection is to the stars, or if he has any connection to any star system. When I was checking in, so I'm checking into his records right now as we're speaking, I originally thought he might be from Orion, but I don't see any Orion connection with P. Diddy. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure I see any star systems connected with him. Okay, so what I pick up with Sean, if we'll call him by his real name, is that he's a soul that had his first, I would say he's kind of a younger soul. So he's had his first incarnations in Maldek and Mars. So I'm not even sure if the term starseed really applies to him, because he didn't really come from another star system. He came from this solar system, but he did start off in Maldek. So a little back history about Maldek. It was a planet that used to exist between Jupiter and Mars. It was an actual planet, and it was the planet where the Orion Empire used to send all their degenerates, so all the people that were criminals, that were really bad. Okay. You have to be pretty bad, I guess, to be exiled from Orion. Okay. But all the really, really bad people that the Orion Empire, and maybe even, I don't know, to a certain extent, the resistance fighters were trying to get rid of, so they got exiled to Maldek. So for that reason, I call Maldek the Australia of our solar system, because it started off with that infamy. So what I saw in the records for Sean is that he actually was born to a couple of Orion individuals that were exiled, so they were exiled to Maldek. So needless to say, their lives in Maldek were very difficult. There was a lot of wars, a lot of conflicts. And so this is what Sean was exposed to, early on. I actually think he's a soul that has gone through a lot of trauma. I guess I don't feel that sorry for him, because I believe even though a lot of us have had traumatic lives. We can always make different choices, but he did go through a lot of trauma in Maldek. And then when Maldek got destroyed, so Maldek went into the Civil War and then they got destroyed. He ended up having some incarnations in Mars and then ultimately had most of his incarnations on planet Earth, starting with Atlantis. So I kind of see a soul that is kind of a younger soul, maybe hasn't evolved that much, has had a multitude of traumatic lifetimes in Maldek, Mars, and on planet Earth. I see somebody that's desperate for relevancy, that wants to be a part of something. And because he was abused so much throughout his previous lifetimes, I think feels like he wants to be in control, and that if he can have control over other people, that gives him power. So this is a very power-hungry soul that we're talking about here. I know he started off in the music business in this lifetime. He was a big, hip-hop star back in I would say the early 90s and even into the 2000s. And he was famous even for a while for having a relationship with Jennifer Lopez, and who knows what those two were conspiring together with. And he's had, I would say, relationships with a lot of different people, actually. But I think what's most interesting is his narcissism and his desire to have control and power. I think he just has never really evolved. Now, the thing that I do want to look back at is I do think his original Orion parents did have some reptilian genetics. That was something I saw in the records right away. So I do think, even though I would say Sean is predominantly humanoid, he does carry quite a bit of reptilian genetics. I think for him, it was natural for him to gravitate towards going down the dark path and, seeking fame and money and power as a result of all the trauma he went through in previous lifetimes, rather than taking the light path. So going back to this lifetime, he's done some pretty bad stuff, okay? I don't even want to get into, all the details, and, I just don't even want to even look at that, because he's made an impact in Hollywood and in, the entertainment industry with the parties and his associations with other celebrities, and with, I would say grooming, some younger celebrities such as Justin Bieber, who we did a reading for. So he's had a big impact. I do think he's just a soul that is unevolved, and that was his response to trauma. I think he is a soul that would rather have control and power over others than, to deal with his inner wounding. So I don't really see a starseed origins for Sean Combs. So looking at his birth date, I would say he's second wave. He was born in 69, but he's not really truly second wave. He's not here on a mission to dismantle the old system. As a matter of fact, his mission has always been to maintain the old system, the old patriarchy, the old boys club. I don't really see starseed connections with Sean, because he didn't really come from another star system. He came from this solar system. And I think he probably will have a lot of lifetimes, probably, working out some karmic stuff. I don't think he's a soul that is going to be evolving to incarnate in other star systems for quite a while. His court date, I know he does have a court date coming up, probably going to be a pretty major one. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that, if there's some big societal changes, if it's going to create the beginning of the dismantling of Hollywood. It'll be interesting to see what part he plays in all of that. I do think it's going to be a very impactful court visit or thing that he's going to be doing, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. And I would like to think that maybe even though he is part of the dark and this has been his journey, that perhaps there'll be some good that'll come out of all of this. It certainly has brought a lot of information about the inner workings of the entertainment system or the industry to our, to the collective consciousness, so it's brought it all to the surface. Like all of you, I'm also waiting to see who's on those P. Diddy lists. I've been waiting for a while because I know we're going to see a lot of famous names on that list. So hopefully that'll be the result of his court appearance, in next month. And, so hopefully this will be the beginning of the end for the current systems that have been in place for a long time, but maybe we'll start seeing the dismantling of all of that. So that's it for P. Diddy or Sean Combs. I want to go now to my next person, but before I do that, we're going to go ahead and just check in and have a little word from our sponsor. So we have a new sponsor, and I'm excited to introduce them to you. Spring is supposed to feel like a fresh start, but for me, it often brings this weird wave of anxiety. The days get longer, there's more pressure to be social, and suddenly everybody's posting their best life on social media. It's like, if I'm not out there thriving 24/7, I'm falling behind. Now, I've definitely felt that seasonal transition anxiety, like I should be doing more, accomplishing more, being more. And honestly, these expectations can get really heavy. That's why I'm really grateful to be working with BetterHelp, today's sponsor. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can help you manage anxiety and whatever else you might be going through. Most people who use BetterHelp are seeking support for anxiety, and 69% of members report feeling better after just 6 weeks. You just fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist in as little as a few days. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Let BetterHelp help you rule your anxiety so it doesn't rule you. Click the link in the description, betterhelp.com, Debbie Solaris, to get 10% off of your first month of therapy. Okay, so we're back, and I want to look at another very narcissistic personality type that's been in the news quite a bit lately, and that is Kanye West. So Kanye, or as he goes by Ye, I guess he changed his name, Kanye West. So what's the deal with Kanye? Why does he do all the crazy stuff that he does, especially for being such a talented individual? Okay, so he does have talent. With Kanye West, when I checked into his records, what I saw with him is that he does have some star lineage. But what I saw with him was not Orion either. Again, I thought, okay, yeah, he's, he really seems to buddy up with Donald Trump and with some of the, political figures that are big in the industry right now. What's his connection? So initially I thought Orion for him too, but when I looked into the records, what I did see for him was Sirius C. Kanye comes from, I don't know if I could really call it Anunnaki, but he does have that kind of Sirius C lineage. So his lineage is from Sirius C, which was infamous for being the star system that contained the planet Nibiru. And I do think that was probably his origins, was Nibiru. So the backdrop story of Sirius C was that it was a system where I would say a lot of reptilian refugees ended up after the Lyra Draconian Wars. And there was a lot of inner dealings between the reptilian faction that was on Sirius C and the humanoids that were all constantly trying to make treaties with these beings. So they intermixed and intermarried. And so the majority of the race that lives in Sirius BC were humanoid reptilian hybrids. They're the beings that I think we now associate with the Anunnaki that we hear about so much here on Earth. So this is what I see with Kanye. He did have his beginnings in Nibiru. So there was a catastrophe that happened with Sirius C, and Nibiru got shot off of its trajectory. So it was used to be in an orbit around Sirius C, and then it got shot off its trajectory during this, I think it was a natural disaster. So this planet headed towards Earth. So what I saw with Kanye is that he's had a lot of, also like Sean, has had a lot of incarnations on Earth, a lot. Mostly in the areas of Africa and the Middle East. So I would say the vast majority of his incarnations on Earth were in those regions. I did see past lives in Egypt for him, past lives in Assyria and Samaria, Babylonia, and sub-Saharan Africa, so he's had a multitude of lifetimes on planet Earth. Again, what I see with him is not so much a lot of trauma like I saw with Sean, okay? I don't see that with Kanye. What I see with him is this never-ending sense of inadequacy. With Sean, I think his inner wounding came from never feeling like he was good enough. And so he kind of flipped the switch in this lifetime and decided that, he's the greatest thing ever, because he's had many lifetimes where he never felt like he measured up. And so he went through, I think, a pretty normal childhood in this lifetime. I mean, I think his parents were fairly well educated, and he grew up in a, I would say, unlike Sean, I think Sean was born into poverty, but he grew up in a very middle-class environment. He started off pretty well. Just like Sean Combs, he did have his beginnings in hip-hop music and has done extremely well in that realm, so he's done just a number of, really wonderful music. If you like hip hop, I'm not a big hip hop fan, but, some people that really like it, he's done extremely well. He's also done well with a number of different projects, including his fashion company. I know he was making Yeezy shoes for a while and, all the things that he was involved with. And, because of his fame and, all the money that he's made, he's had some very high profile relationships with some very famous celebrity women. I think most of us know about his marriage to Kim Kardashian. And at first they seemed like a pair made in heaven. They were together for quite a while and they had 4 kids together. And I haven't really checked into Kim's ancestry or even if she is from, even if she is a starseed, but with Kanye, I do get, starseed lineage with him, but it's dark, it's just like with Sean, his path has always been kind of on the dark. With Kanye, however, he kind of struggles with duality consciousness, where I think he really wants to be part of the light. I think he really wants to do good on the planet, but he keeps slipping into his old dark behaviors. And I know that he's been diagnosed as bipolar. I think that was part of the reason why I think that kind of instigated, the crumbling of his marriage to Kim Kardashian. Unlike Sean, who is totally of the dark, I mean, Sean has no desire to do any good, so he's just, a baddie through and through. I think Kanye actually wants to do good. I think he desires that, but he keeps falling into his dark habits. And just like Sean, I think he feels best, maybe because of his inner inadequacies, that when he's able to control other people and control situations and have fame and money and power, so he has this kind of dual thing going on, the struggle, this internal struggle. I really was a little disturbed to see how he treated his current wife, Bianca Censori. just making her go out in these scandalous, naked outfits and pretty much humiliating her, with all of these, his demands that she wears these outrageous outfits in public events. And I think that is kind of a sign of just how insane, some of his behavior can get. And then there was that time when he was trying to run for president, and I don't think anybody took him seriously. And then he was trying to get buddy with Donald Trump for a while, and that never went anywhere either. But this is an individual that's actually, I think, quite talented. He's got glimpses of genius. He's got potential. I think he's too far gone. I would like to think that maybe, he can get aligned with the light and do some good things, but I think he's going to have to do a lot of healing. And I just don't think he's self-aware enough to do that. So that's what I'm seeing with Kanye. So I think to wrap this whole thing up, I would like to say that I don't think narcissism as a personality trait is really aligned with any particular star system, and certainly not necessarily aligned with planet Earth per se. I think it's just maybe a psychological response to maybe some past life trauma or some personality inadequacies. So that's what I'm seeing with the narcissism that's displayed by these two individuals that I just talked about. I wish for them a lot of healing. I really do. I don't have any sympathy for either one of them, but I do hope that, at some point, they do find some peace and healing. Anyway, that concludes this video today. I hope you enjoyed my insights into these two very controversial individuals. And we're going to do the female version in the next video. So I hope you guys will stay tuned for that. So I'm going to look at two narcissistic females in our next video. So hopefully that will be exciting and fun, and we can do some contrasting and comparing with those. So anyway, thank you again for tuning in. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But before I do that, this is just a response to some of you, but some of you have asked me to not blur my background. So I'm not blurring it. This is just how it looks because of the lighting. So that way you can see that, yes, I'm at home. I'm in my office. This is my real office. And just here hanging out, and I have nothing to hide. I just thought, the blurred background might have been better, but I'm going to go ahead and use my real background from here on out. So hopefully you can see that I'm in a real environment. And also, as always, I always ask that you share the content if you feel inspired to do so. Give me a like. And especially subscribe. So please subscribe to my channel, and we'll try to get out some more of these very informative and insightful readings and videos. I hope this helps, and many, many blessings to all of you. Take care.